Previously, I examined seasons 1 through 4 of SpongeBob and discovered how SpongeBob reframes masculinity. But today, we go even further to see how that innovative portrayal took a turn for the worse. In this video, we are going to examine the thematic elements of masculinity, gender, and gender expression present in seasons 5 through 8 of SpongeBob and compare them to the previous season's representation of masculinity. I'll be showing you how this subversive take on masculinity became an upsetting cliché. Before we get started, I want to be clear that I grew up with these seasons of SpongeBob. I was the prime age demographic for when these episodes were coming out. I do not have anything against these seasons, and I will try to critique them as fairly as I possibly can. With that said, let's jump in. Season 5 is where we start to see the perspective shift. Elements start to bleed in that portray SpongeBob and Patrick much more childishly, in a way that feels negative rather than positive, which is the exact opposite of what the first movie taught us. The movie said being a kid is awesome, should be celebrated, and is a source of strength for SpongeBob. But here, it's the opposite.
Wow, Plankton has to buy baby clothes?
How embarrassing! That ride's for babies.
Yeah, let's ride it just to see how baby-fied it is.
The show says that being sensitive means you're a baby or a kid, and that's something to make fun of, something to avoid. In the real world, calling someone a crybaby isn't just an insult, but is especially emasculating to men and masked individuals.
What are you so scared about? You can do it! No, you can't. You're a big crybaby.
That SpongeBob is such a crybaby.
Therefore, SpongeBob and Patrick being portrayed this way refutes the previous themes of the show. SpongeBob was a character who took something that people saw as a weakness and turned it into a strength. But now the show just uses it as a punchline. We as the audience are now taught to not be like SpongeBob, but this is just the first of many changes to the show. In these seasons, we also see an increase in SpongeBob changing his appearance and/or personality to fit in. He seems much more insecure with himself.
Come on, SpongeBob. Be a man! Mr. Krabs!
Well, don't you worry none. I know some natural remedies that'll fix you.
Keep your natural remedies to yourself. Manly dudes like me don't need them.
Now, he did have his moments of insecurity in the early seasons, but it was always due to pressure from others, and he always reverted back to his old self in the end. Here, however, not only do we get a lot more of these kinds of episodes, but we also see the change becoming permanent, positive, or played for a joke in the end.
Baby, yeah! Is this what Patrick was talking about? This is really living in the moment! Hey, what are you two lazy bones doing lying around? There's a really cool ramp down the hall. I got room for 2 more. What would Larry do?
This young hero should be praised for his dedication to manliness.
By the end of these kinds of episodes, SpongeBob represents the very toxicity he endured in the beginning of these episodes.
Why don't you scram, you little freeloader?
This goes against the show's original message to be yourself, and it's implied that SpongeBob changing himself will heighten his social status, power, sex appeal, or a mix of the three, therefore linking these changes to his masculinity. However, another problem is characters criticizing SpongeBob for how he presents himself, and SpongeBob's femininity becoming the butt of the joke much more often.
Nice bunnies.
I know, it's so embarrassing. I wanted the one with the kittens on it.
Right.
Hey, Patrick.
Hey, SpongeBob, what's with the tutu?
It's not a tutu, it's a man-tu.
For example, Larry the Lobster was always a traditionally masculine character, but a positive one. He never berated anyone for how they presented and was comfortable expressing his sensitivities as well. But now we see him making SpongeBob and Patrick feel inferior as men, where we would have never seen that from him in the early seasons.
And you can't live like these two. Just look at them. Spineless. Weak. Pathetic.
Even Patrick is more critical of SpongeBob.
You need to learn to say no. Stand up for yourself, man. You need thicker skin.
If SpongeBob's best friend can't even accept him for who he is, how are the viewers supposed to? These examples show a clear shift in how the show portrays masculinity and femininity, and the messages it's teaching the viewers. Sexism and misogyny are also more prevalent in the show.
You know how girls are. I am so living Dr. Farawayville.
Who the heck is that?
I don't know, but she is ugly. Sheesh, I don't know what she's so upset about. I think she looks better this way.
But this is best shown through Plankton and Karen. As I was making my way through these seasons, I noticed a larger prevalence of their dynamic. In the early seasons, they were represented as a couple with fairly traditional gender roles, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. However, in these later seasons, their marriage is presented with a lot of toxicity on both sides. They essentially became caricatures of themselves, with Plankton becoming the neglectful husband and Karen becoming the nagging wife. Now, this doesn't seem too bad until you realize that this is every interaction they have. They stop being good to each other and just spout negativity towards one another in every scene they share together. There are many episodes that show Plankton verbally berating Karen, selfishly abusing his power over her, and overall using his toxic masculinity as a way to blame all of his faults and failures on the only woman in his life.
Spray.
Yes.
Sponge. Dab.
Right.
2.
Now you're just talking gibberish. What I really need is to spray Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob.
That's just what
I don't want to hear any more of your loony schemes, Karen. I've got work to do.
It's our wedding anniversary.
Oh, that. Yippee. I don't need you. I can make a whole army of computers that might actually help me steal the formula.
I can't believe you tried to fool me for your own selfish needs.
Just think of it as our second honeymoon.
Don't you have to have a first honeymoon before you embark on a second?
Why don't I bump those vacation settings up a smidge?
Advertise your product, of course.
Advertising? I can't believe it took me this long to come up with this.
This is blatant misogyny and sexism, which is often intertwined within toxic masculinity. However, this doesn't just affect Plankton, it also affects Karen. Karen is very pessimistic towards Plankton, often demoralizes him, and she keeps on returning to this toxic relationship.
Now my baby gas can't possibly fail.
Just like all your other plans that couldn't possibly fail.
I don't know anymore.
Why don't you just work on a new recipe?
In the one episode where it really feels like Karen is finally leaving Plankton for good, she not only goes back to him in the end, but fights the new robot wife he created for himself instead of staying mad at Plankton. Then she loses her memory of the whole event, and rather than apologizing for replacing her, Plankton gaslights her into thinking it was a dream.
I had the strangest dream. I dreamt there were 2 of me.
2 of you? Well, that is strange.
Toxic masculinity often uses traditional gender roles as a justification and springboard for sexism and misogyny, and this kind of behavior also has devastating effects for women and femmes and how we treat each other, as shown in the episode.
Well, if it isn't Little Miss Homewrecker, and if it isn't the washed-up analog has-been.
This toxic way of expressing one's masculinity ends up harming everyone and is an example of how it affects people in real life. Now let's finally talk about my whole reason for making this video. SpongeBob's crying. SpongeBob was always a character that was very comfortable with crying. He's naturally very sensitive and feels emotions very strongly. That is of course still the case in these seasons, however the show gets very comfortable making fun of SpongeBob's crying. There's even a whole episode dedicated to it.
Alright, look, so far today, and it's not even 2 o'clock yet, you have cried 43 times.
This is a complete 180 from how the early seasons portrayed SpongeBob's sensitive nature. Now, the show and its characters often invalidate SpongeBob's emotions and treat him like a joke. It completely disrespects his character and what he used to represent for people. Throughout all of these changes, this is the one that hurts the most to watch. Because now the show doesn't teach or normalize masks and men expressing their feelings. Instead, it reinforces gender expectations and unhealthy attitudes towards vulnerable emotions, aka toxic masculinity. This is the exact opposite of what the show originally taught us, of what SpongeBob stands for, of the messages that we used to be able to take away from the show. To transform SpongeBob into a laughingstock every time he expresses himself not only feels gross as a viewer, but feels disrespectful to everyone who felt empowered by how SpongeBob carried himself. And if you're still under the impression that this isn't that big of a deal, here's a montage of just some of the times the show invalidates SpongeBob's emotions.
Just keep walking, Squiddy.
No, you are looking like Savannah.
SpongeBob, please stop crying.
Please, please, please. I am nothing more than a bike rack. A sad little bike rack.
It's a quick montage of flashbacks I've edited together that shows the hundreds of tears you have cried over the years.
Thousands of tears later. Here, take your dirty, rotten money. I don't even know you anymore. baby.
Get a grip. Now he's crying away me mustard.
Frank and I'm sorry. I'm sorry I made my Krabby Patty so delicious.
Hey, get lost!
My best theory is that they simply wanted to cater to a young male audience. In the beginning of the show, it felt marketed to all kids regardless of gender, but the more it went on, it felt like the show became marketed more and more towards young boys instead of young girls. This change came at the expense of SpongeBob's subversive masculinity because hypermasculinity is common in marketing towards boys. Not only do we see less diverse takes on masculinity, but also a focus on more gross-out humor and jokes about SpongeBob's sensitivities, all of which were done to make the show appear more masculine in my opinion. As for another example, here are two SpongeBob Burger King ads, one from 2004 and one from 2009.
SpongeBob toys are now at Burger King in celebration of the SpongeBob SquarePants movie.
I'm ready! Wow, Patrick Patty.
I like square butts and I cannot lie. Squid and Sea Star can't deny. When a sponge walks in, four corners in his pants like he got phone book implants, the crowd shouts. All the ladies stare. Ain't those pants are square.
These advertisements are a great example of what I'm talking about in regards to marketing and, in my opinion, are another clue as to why SpongeBob's depiction of masculinity changed over time. This meant that SpongeBob couldn't be a character that embodied both masculinity and femininity anymore, or that if he did, that couldn't be seen as a positive, but as a joke. This change seems to happen slowly over the course of a few years. It started out with Steven Hillenburg stepping down as showrunner, and creative director Derek Dryman leaving after the first movie, then a bit of flanderization, and before we knew it, SpongeBob had completely changed. The original themes of the show were pushed aside in favor of easy jokes. It's easy to make fun of male characters for being quote-unquote girly. It's easy to make characters fall in line with societal expectations. It's easy to forgo complex themes of gender expression and diverse takes on masculinity in order to transform SpongeBob to be like most other shows out there. However, I don't think this was done on purpose. I think what happened to SpongeBob was an unintentional reinforcement of our own arbitrary rules surrounding gender done by people who live within the real confines of those rules. The thematic changes surrounding gender in SpongeBob were simply a reflection of what occurs in real life to those who go against the status quo. I know this sounds way too poetic to be true, but that is what happened. For whatever reason, SpongeBob went from a show that depicted masculinity in a relatable, dynamic way to a show that disrespects its main character for being himself and expects us to laugh at that. SpongeBob is a show that is very near and dear to my heart. It's a show with a surprising amount of depth and relatability that I keep finding new meaning in every time I watch it. And sadly, the changes that happen to SpongeBob in these seasons is probably relatable to many individuals who face societal opposition to how they express their masculinity. But that's also what's great about this era. Even at SpongeBob's worst, he manages to represent a group of people who have also been disrespected and made into jokes for how they present themselves. And that's kind of lovely to me. Love it or hate it, that's what I've chosen to take away from this era. Because if you stop yourself at the shore, you'll never see the beauty under the water. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope all of you enjoyed. Please, please, please feel free to like and subscribe this video and let me know what you think down in the comments. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this one, and I hope all of you have a wonderful day or night, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!